The era of Ursula von der Leyen stands at a crossroads. The President of the European Commission, one of the most powerful women in Europe, is preparing her resignation, and no one can say for sure which forces pushed her to this step. Was it political pressure, intrigues from within her own ranks, or simply the burden of a fractured continent? One thing is certain: Europe is in turmoil. Rumours, power games, and uncertainty overshadow every corner of the Brussels power apparatus. According to Politico, a state of emergency reigns in the circles of the EU headquarters. Von der Leyen's unexpected departure plunges the European Union into a deep institutional crisis. Diverging views on foreign policy, energy supply, budget issues, and strategic alliances are now coming to the surface. The European Council is divided, and the member states are struggling to redefine the political line. As Le Figaro reports, heads of state and government are irritated and perplexed. The reasons for the resignation remain mysterious. In the corridors of power, images are leaking out that speak louder than any official statement. Ursula von der Leyen is said to have broken into tears during a heated meeting after the delegations of Italy and Hungary, led by Giorgia Meloni and Viktor Orban, demonstratively walked out. Officially, this will never be confirmed, but in politics, perception is reality. The rumour spread like wildfire and symbolised an EU not only divided, but on the verge of a political breakdown. The ground in Brussels had already been shaking. On August 22, 2025, the Commission had to deny rumours that von der Leyen had been excluded from a meeting with Donald Trump and other heads of state. Her spokesperson rejected this, but the mistrust had already been sown. In this tense climate, the drama unfolded around new budget rules and the planned EU Sovereignty Fund. At first glance, an ambitious plan, joint debt to finance green projects and the defence industry. But for Italy and Hungary, this fund was a provocation. Rome was to process 150,000 additional asylum applications, while Budapest was required either to take in 50,000 migrants or pay billions in penalties. An energy solidarity mechanism forced Hungary to supply gas into the European grid at a capped price, a direct attack on Orban's energy policy. For Meloni and Orban, this was not mere negotiation tactics, but a fundamental rejection of the centralist agenda. Their demonstrative walkout was the climax of the collision with Brussels. Von der Leyen's emotional reaction, whether tears of frustration or a sign of breakdown, symbolizes the crisis of a federalist dream colliding with the harsh reality of national interests. It marked the moment when the Commission President had to realize that she was no longer leading, but witnessing the collapse of her authority. At the same time, protests flared on the streets. While debates continued in Brussels, farmers in Germany, France, and Poland blocked highways. They protested against Green Deal requirements, nitrogen limits, fallow land obligations, and duty-free Ukrainian grain, measures pushed forward by the Commission. The rebellion of the governments in Rome and Budapest was thus part of a broader popular movement already visible in Bavaria's fields and Western Europe's ports. The Franco-German axis also showed cracks. On August 28, a meeting in Paris revealed the growing distance between Berlin and Paris. Germany, weakened by economic downturn and stagnating industrial production, could not take on a leadership role. Chancellor Friedrich Merz spoke of the need for compromise, but Berlin was too weak to stabilize a divided Europe. In France, the crisis deepened. Prime Minister François Bayrou announced a vote of no confidence, triggered by a Brussels-imposed austerity plan of 44 billion euros intended to bring France's budget deficit below the EU's 3% threshold. Street protests in Marseille against the austerity measures, which mainly hit the lower classes, made the tensions visible. President Macron defended the cuts, but at the same time raised the military budget by 6.5 billion euros, a contradictory message. The events of the last week of August painted a picture of a continent in political instability. Votes of no confidence, street protests, and contradictory statements from the capitals revealed a union more divided than ever. Von der Leyen's authority crumbled because it had stood on fragile ground from the beginning. In 2019, she was not directly elected by the people, but was the result of a compromise between Merkel and Macron. Without a direct mandate, her power depended on the goodwill of the heads of state and government, precisely those who are now abandoning her. Added to this were old scandals and affairs. Her time as German defense minister was marked by consultant scandals, in which millions were spent on external advisors, while tanks, ships, and aircraft of the Bundeswehr were in a deplorable state. This reputation of mismanagement followed her to Brussels. Then came the Pfizergate scandal. Vanished text messages from negotiations over a €35 billion vaccine deal fueled suspicion that von der Leyen was above the rules. The ongoing investigation by the European Public Prosecutor reinforced this impression. Meanwhile, member state policies escalated tensions. Giorgia Meloni spoke of a stop against Brussels, while Pedro Sanchez called for solidarity, a subtle criticism of Italy's solo path. In Central and Eastern Europe, many countries secretly saw that the Commission, which had lectured them on rule of law, was now facing a rebellion. Polls from August 26th showed a significant decline in trust in EU institutions, especially in Southern and Central Europe. But why did von der Leyen resign precisely now? According to Spiegel, confidential documents reveal that strategic contracts in cybersecurity and energy resources were negotiated behind closed doors without member state oversight. Analysts interpret this as a signal of an unprecedented transparency crisis, even more explosive. Financial Times reported that von der Leyen approved multi-billion deals with tech corporations on data management and AI without consulting member states. European parliamentarians accuse her of secret diplomacy that exacerbated internal tensions and ultimately triggered her resignation. Reuters reported on July 10, 2025, that shortly before her departure, she held secret talks with international financial institutions about a private fund for cybersecurity and defense technologies. Some suspect she is planning a spectacular global comeback. Euractiv reported on July 12, 2025, about discreet meetings with a U.S. consortium, possibly for a position in an international organization for AI and digital security. Is von der Leyen leaving the European stage, or is she planning a global rise to power? Economically, her resignation could have devastating consequences. According to Bloomberg, the euro plunged and government bonds came under pressure. Without a clear succession plan, a phase of instability looms. In Brussels, a power struggle erupted over her successor. Some states favour a technocrat, others a political reorientation of the EU. Without consensus, key investment projects from 2027 to 2030, amounting to around €15 billion annually, could be jeopardised. Activists such as Europewatch claim that von der Leyen has already received offers for top positions in international organisations. In many countries, sovereigntist parties are gaining support as their call for national independence falls on fertile ground in the crisis. For many, her resignation symbolises the failure of the centralist EU model. Europe stands at a historic crossroads: reform or disintegration. The shock resignation of Ursula von der Leyen opens a decisive junction for the continent's future. What do people think? Was this step inevitable? And where will her path lead now? The answers remain uncertain, but one thing is clear: Europe's history is in one of its most dramatic chapters since the founding of the Union. The coming months will show whether reforms are possible or whether the political union faces a deep rupture.